How's it going, everybody? My name's Dave Whipple and you're watching Bushradical. As you can see, I've been busy since the last time I filmed. Got a few corners up, got a few short walls up. I'm filling in underneath where the windows are going to go. As soon as I get to the end, I'll put up another trimmer. Trimmer here, trimmer over here. Then I'll put the sills on top. This is where the kitchen's going to be. Now this is a great episode to do a bunch of voiceover in, because honestly I'm running a chainsaw or got the generator on throughout this entire episode. What I'm doing here is I'm throwing the two-siding jig. This is not a two-siding jig, excuse me, this is actually a length jig. Now this jig is a ½ inch shorter than the log I want to cut, because the chainsaw doesn't cut right up to the jig, it just kind of cuts a 1/4 inch from the jig. So if you want a 28-inch board, you make a length jig that's 27.5 inches. I use the edge of the claw hammer to loosen up the bark, and then I like to tap the edges. It kind of breaks it loose all the way around. You can just stick your fingers in and pop it right off. Your hand works better than anything else for this. Amazing, huh? When you're putting up a log, you've got to take the tree in the woods, fell the tree, cut it into a rough section, set the jig on top of the log, use your chainsaw and two-side the log, bring it back, set it on the dunnage over there, put a length jig on it, cut it to the exact length, pop the bark off it, bring the cut log over, tack your insulation up on the previous log, stand the log up, mosquito. Stand your log up, run a few screws into it, and then you've got one log up, either 6 inches of wall or 8 inches of wall. And it's a process. I just have full bats of insulation. Throw down a 2x6. And you peel your insulation. Should do this with sill seal, fiberglass sill seal, but it's hard to find around here for some reason. I'll have next to nothing into this cabin by the time I'm done. Just a lot of work. So basically what we're doing here is a rinse and repeat process. You get your log, you get your drill set up, get the generator running, and you put your log up, you go get another one, you put your log up, you go get another one. The thing about log is it's a very repetitive process. Make sure your insulation's all stapled in. Put your log in place. You run a few screws into it. One thing about the length jig is supposed to get your logs all exactly the same length. But they do vary a little bit, so what you have to do when you're done is you have to flatten them all off to approximately the same length. I mean, they're close, but they're not perfect because the jig isn't perfect. The jig mounts on a 2x6, but it's a little bit wider than 5.5 inches, so it can slot back and forth, and that can compound either direction. You can end up with a log that's a little shorter than it should be, or a log that's a little longer than it should be. When this bark comes off, it's just like it's greased. It's so slippery. And a log, big logs, you got to carry them with the rough cut side on your shoulder. You put the freshly peeled side on your shoulder, it's literally like axle grease. Right on your butt. Ridiculously dangerous. On this last run, I always try to put one toenailing it into the beam underneath. About every third or fourth one. You can see the difference in color between these freshly peeled logs and these ones. These guys have been up for a few days and they get nice and gold. Give it about 5-6 days, these ones will look just like those. As you can see right here, I've set up my guide flank, my two-siding jig, along one of these short walls, and I'm using it to trim off the top of these logs. Now, I'll tell you what, that jig sure works a lot better on a log laying on the ground than it does nailed up to the side of the wall. Let me tell you, cutting these things would have been better freehand, and I think I did freehand one of the next ones. This was a pain in the neck, cutting sideways with that jig. Ugh, that's no fun at all. I think I'm going to freehand the next one. What I'm doing here is I'm beveling the logs. It's very important that the cutting edge of the bar is going into the wood as opposed to tearing out. Like if I was to cut from the other direction, the bar would be tearing the fibers out. You'd end up with ragged edges. What you want to do is you want the leading edge of that saw, whether it's the top or the bottom, that's actually making the leading edge of the cut. You want it to be going into the wood so it produces a nice, smooth edge. Check it out. Yeah, actually, I'm using a Poland Wild thing, something like that. Brooke found this saw at the dump, and somebody threw it away because they couldn't get it to run. It needed the high and low idle adjusted. I kind of had to rip part of it apart just to get to the high and low screws, but it's a light saw, worked good for this job. You can see I'm doing the same thing on this side. I'm taking the chainsaw and making sure that the leading edge is cutting into the wood so I don't end up with a ragged edge. And that's pretty much all there is to it. I'm trying to bevel all my log ends, whether it's the tops of the trimmers where they meet the header, or the tops of the door trimmers where they meet the door header, underneath the windowsill. I kind of like the look of the beveled edges on the ends of the logs. And that's pretty much all there is to it. All these short walls, they take less time, I suppose. There's just less wood. You're going through the same set of motions, but you're not dealing with as much weight. The short walls are all pretty easy. They went pretty quick. It's the logging that takes the longest. Cutting the timber, measuring it, two-siding it, and hiking it out of the woods by hand is the real hard part of this job. That's what really takes the most time. That's what really takes the most effort. That's what makes building a cabin like this work. If your logs were peeled and two-sided and cut to length, it would literally be bang, bang, bang. They would go right up. Hey, thank you guys for watching this installment of the Alaska Cabin Project. My name is Dave Whipple, and you're watching Bushradical. Thanks for watching, and be radical, eh? See you soon.